So I have all of my pieces cut out except for the pieces that need interfacing. So first I have to make sure that my fabric is pressed. It was pressed when I cut out all my other pieces, but then I had to pack up. And when I folded my fabric, it got wrinkled again. So next I figure out where I'm gonna place the pieces that need block fusing. And so I have this curved area here, so I'm tempted to maybe put this in there. But then I'm gonna have these two holes sticking up into the rest of my fabric. So I don't know, maybe I think there's just no good way to do this. So I'm just gonna pick away. I don't know why. This one right here feels good to me. And then I have my two front neck facings. And I have my little knot. And I have my two back neck facings. And all I'm doing right now is planning. Where do I think I want this fusible interfacing to go? So I might select something like that. And so I'm going to use fusing it. So I just figure out where I need my fusible interfacing to go. And I might figure out how much of this I need and then see if what is in the middle here, can I use that for this stuff? Like, I don't know. Like if I cut this piece of interfacing and put it over here, will it work? So yeah, I'll probably do something like that. So because I have weird shapes and I'm trying to be conservative with my interfacing, I'm going to draw this on my interfacing first. And rough cut it with a margin. Let's see, what do I have that would draw on this? My patterns are under my feet. That's good, okay. So let's try this. This is just like regular, like old-fashioned chalkboard chalk. And I'm not cutting this exact shape out of interfacing. I'm just getting an idea of how much I need. Normally you just block fuse in a square, but I'm trying to save some interfacing. Okay, I don't want to iron this, so I'll remove that and remove that. I'm just trying to make sure it's laying. And then grab a little press cloth, read the instructions. I just want to know if I need any steam. So it says pre-shrink, pre-test on a scrap, trim and steam. Okay. So it says place rough or shiny adhesive side of interfacing against wrong side of fabric. Pin, I'm not going to pin. Then steam baste along edges. Remove pins. Cover with a damp press cloth. Okay. Close the door so you don't have to hear my husband singing. Just bursts into the house in song. It's fabulous. You know, it's just such a joy to be married to me that he can't help himself. So I need to turn on the light here. I just want to make sure that I'm putting my interfacing on the correct side of my fabric, or the wrong side, but so putting the interfacing on the wrong side is correct. Okay, so I'm happy with that. And then it says to steam baste. So I'm going to figure out where my fusible is. And I'm just going to spray my press cloth. So that's right here. And then just apply. Did it say how many seconds to leave it? 10 seconds. See how it's going. Okay, so I have to get a little closer to the edges up there. I think this is affecting my plastic mat. I'm like watching this like move up and down. Oops. I go put my iron back on the base to get it hot, and then while it's warming, I'll go ahead and check and see how this is going. So we need a little more time right here. That seems okay. Let's check over here. Okay, so we need a little time on this edge. Okay. So I need some more time right here. And some more time up here. Okay. So now I can figure out, so this piece is kind of the test, right? Did my fabric shrink? I tried to pre-shrink it with steam, but crepe is notorious for shrinking. But it looks like I did okay. Yay! Alright, so I can trace that out later, but first let me block fuse this. And I'm taking the time to show this on camera because people often skip this, and it is important to the success of your garment. I know I laid these out differently before, but okay, so something like that before. Not exactly, but something like that. Okay, and then let me find that section that I cut off from my curve and see what I can do. Okay, something like that looks good. I have it upside down. Do I? Yeah. It's not upside down. It is fine. Everything's fine. Don't panic. Okay. So I'm just cutting the interfacing so that it's smaller than the fabric that I want to block fuse it to. Okay. I need to move this up a little bit. And then I'll put my press cloth back on it. Put my iron down so I can use my two hands to check and see if everything is adhered. So that looks good. Okay, that looks great. Okay, so my fabric is block fused. Now I am going to trace my pieces. Oh no, I dropped my chalk and it shattered. Bummer. Although the sharp little shards might make it easy to trace. I know, every time I lay these out, I lay them in a different configuration. I hope it's not driving you crazy. Okay, so make sure this is on grain. And then I'll use one of my little shards of chalk and see how it works for tracing. Okay, I'm gonna go grab something else. Well, let's try this. Let's try this. See how we like that. So I'm getting my chalk into my notches. Okay, I'm going to remove this piece and see if I like it. Yeah, this chalk is working well. And then I'm just curious. Any way to fit this over here? Nope. Okay, so this will go over here somewhere. Maybe like that. Maybe like that. I don't know yet. And this. Maybe like that. Make sure I get my grain line right. And this. Or if I put this like this, will this fit here? Yes, so I could do that. So I think I'll do something like that. Seam allowance notch at the front where it's going to attach to the center front, and then this little notch to help us find where we are, because you will see once we cut these out they look remarkably similar. If you're doing a light color fabric, you might consider writing on the wrong side if you have those friction markers that erase, so that you know which end is up and what's the front and what's the back, so that you don't have trouble fitting things together. Shoulder notch. And then I'll trace around the front neck curve, and then I'll do the center front seam allowance notch, and then where the center front seam attaches to the center front bodice, and then around this outer facing edge, and then seam allowance notch, and then matching notch. Okay, so I have all of those pieces traced onto my block fused fabric. Now I will put my kick pleat face. And I think I'm going to need some weights for this guy so that it doesn't shift. You can also pin it. See, I moved all my stuff around. Let's see, where did I put my weights? Here's a set. Just make sure that my entire piece is on block fused fabric. Now, if like a little tiny corner or a little bit of your edge, like the part that's going to be in seam allowance or something, is not on your block fused fabric, so like if your seam allowance is 1/2 inch, let's say, and your block fusing doesn't get all the way to the edge of your paper, but it covers the part inside the seam allowance, what we call the finished measurement, or the finished shape, or the finished edge, you're going to be okay. So don't freak out. And remember, even though you might be making this out of fashion fabric, it is still your first sample. And often in industry, we make more than one sample before we're done. It's not like when a designer designs something, the first time it gets made, that's the one that goes on the runway. That hardly ever happens. Like, there is months of research and development for a single garment. So don't feel like this has got to be 100% perfect. The purpose of making this sample is to learn what is not right about it, because we expect things to not be perfect. But you're doing everything in your power to make it as good as you can, because you don't want extra work fixing mistakes that aren't there. Okay, so I'm putting my chalk away. And now I will go ahead and cut out my pieces. Block fused fabric is so much easier to cut. And the reason we block fuse is so that we don't have to make, well, there's a lot of reasons, but in our little world, as pattern making and draping, just students in general, if you don't block fuse, you have to make a pattern for the fusible interfacing, or whatever interfacing you're using. And it's not an exact copy. It has to be graded down to a little bit smaller size in a very specific way. And so block fusing is less work. If you cut the interfacing piece out of fusible, and then you cut your fabric out of fabric, and then you try to fuse the two together, you're going to have a mess on your hands. Believe me, if it could be done with less work, the fashion industry would figure out a way. But, I mean, you can do things with less work, but there are consequences. Okay, so for your notches, it's just a little teeny tiny snip into the fabric. So it's not, like, I only have a 1/4 inch seam allowance around this neck. So if I'm doing like a 1/4 inch or a 3/8 inch snip, I'm going to have a hole in my neckline. So it's a very tiny, tiny little snip that you're doing. Just enough that when you go to sew it, you can spread it apart a little bit and see where it is. And then the other thing I've been doing with my pieces is I've been keeping them stacked with the piece that I cut it from, so that I can identify them later. So I might like safety pin them together or something, so that I don't mistakenly attempt to sew them upside down or overlock the wrong side or anything like that. Remember, very tiny snips. Where'd my pattern piece for this go? As I was cutting this, I thought of another way to do the pattern, but we have already started down this path. And we'll see how it goes. Let's see. I think I have to move this table a little bit so that I can get at this piece. That's awkward and uncomfortable. Let's try this way. See if I can make this less awkward and uncomfortable. All right, all of my block fused pieces have been cut out, and I'm ready for the next thing.